My name's Elias. I'm 29, and I've always been the other child, the one no one noticed unless they needed something. If my younger brother Lucas wanted the last slice of cake, he got it. If he messed up at school, it was just a rough patch. When I aced my college finals, my mom asked if I could stop bragging, and if I ever brought it up, I'd hear the same thing. Why are you always trying to compete? Lucas needs more support than you. I learned to live with it. Not happily, not peacefully, but I adapted. I worked hard, kept my head down, and carved out my own life far away from home. I got a job in tech, moved into a quiet apartment a few cities over, and built something I could call mine. I still visited, sent birthday cards, remembered anniversaries, paid attention to what people liked, but the affection never flowed both ways, especially not from my mother. Lucas was always the center of gravity in our family. He had this charm that everyone seemed to fall for, this way of turning every mistake into a lovable quirk. He blew through jobs, relationships, even once totaled the family car. But every time, my mom brushed it off with a soft smile and he's just figuring things out. I wasn't jealous, not in the way people think. I didn't want his mess of a life. What I wanted was acknowledgement. A moment. A thank you, Elias, that didn't sound like an afterthought or come attached to a request for money. The final crack didn't start with something big. It started with an email. My mom sent out a group message, me, my aunts, cousins, even some extended family I hadn't seen in years, inviting us all to Lucas's birthday dinner. It was going to be a celebration of his growth, she wrote. A chance to honor the man he's becoming. That line made me pause. Lucas was turning 27. He was between jobs again, had moved back home, again, and was still borrowing money from half the people on that email list. But fine. I marked the date, booked the time off, even picked up a card and a thoughtful gift, a framed map of all the cities Lucas said he wanted to visit someday. I showed up on time, dressed decent, gift-wrapped. The dinner was at this fancy little restaurant downtown, one of those spots with mood lighting and absurdly small portions. My mom was already there, holding court at the head of the long table, glowing like it was her birthday. She waved me over with that fake smile she pulls out for company and gave me the standard, "So glad you could make it." No hug, no warmth, just obligation wrapped in civility. Lucas walked in 10 minutes later, flanked by his girlfriend and some friends I didn't recognize. Everyone stood up like royalty had entered the room. The laughter got louder, the compliments started pouring in, and I faded to the background like always. I tried to make small talk with my uncle, but he kept drifting into stories about Lucas's ambitions and potential. My cousin asked if I was still working that coding job, and then immediately pivoted to asking if I could help Lucas build an app idea he had. I excused myself and went to the bar for a moment alone. By the time dinner was served, I had given up on meaningful conversation. I just wanted to eat, hand over the gift, say happy birthday, and go home. But of course, the universe, or maybe my mother, had other plans. When dessert came out, so did the speeches. First, Lucas gave a predictably messy, half-serious thank you speech, peppered with jokes about how he wouldn't have made it here without his amazing support system. He thanked his girlfriend, his friends, and finally his mom, who teared up on cue. No mention of me, not even a glance. Then my mother stood up. She held her glass high and smiled, that tight, theatrical smile she saves for moments she wants to be remembered. "Let's raise a glass," she said, "to the child who actually matters." There was a beat of silence, just a split second, but it was long enough. Long enough for every pair of eyes at the table to flick toward me. The laughter that followed wasn't even subtle. My uncle chuckled. My cousin snorted into her drink. Even Lucas gave that smug, half-laugh he always used when someone took a jab at me. I felt heat rise in my chest, not anger at first, just the raw sting of humiliation, of being so publicly sidelined by the woman who was supposed to love me without conditions. I didn't say anything at first, just smiled, nodded slowly. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. Nothing fancy, just a plain, sealed letter I'd been holding on to for a while. I stood up, walked around the table, and placed it gently in front of my mom. "If tonight's about celebrating the one who matters," I said, voice even but firm, "then this must belong to him." The room went quiet, dead quiet. My mother stared at the envelope like it had teeth. She didn't touch it at first, just looked up at me with a faint crease in her brow, trying to read the situation. Lucas looked confused. Everyone else went still, unsure whether this was a joke or a scene. But I didn't move. I just folded my hands in front of me and waited. Eventually, she opened it. And that's where everything started to unravel. She unfolded the letter slowly, like it might explode. Her eyes scanned the page, and I saw the flicker of confusion turn into something darker, tightened jaw, narrowed eyes, the way she always looked when things slipped out of her control. Her fingers trembled just slightly, but she was trying hard to pretend they weren't. Lucas leaned over to peek at it, but she angled it away from him, clutching it like it was private, like it was hers. What is this?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. I stayed standing. "Read it aloud," I said calmly. "Since we're all here to celebrate honesty and family." She didn't. Of course she didn't. My mother's pride is like granite, cold, polished, and nearly impossible to crack. But Lucas was already snatching it from her hands with that careless grin he always wore when he thought the spotlight was about to land on him. "Relax, Mom," he said, laughing a little as he smoothed the paper. "Let's see what Elias got me. Hope it's not another lecture." The room held its breath. He started reading, his voice cheerful at first, like it was another toast. "To the one who matters. Since I've never been given much of a chance to say this out loud, I figured your birthday was as good a time as any." He slowed down, his grin faltering as he read ahead. "I've spent years watching this family bend over backward to make you feel like a king." He stopped, looked up at me. "Is this a joke?" "Keep reading," I said, still standing there, calm on the outside, heart thundering inside my chest. Lucas glanced around, now visibly uncomfortable, but pride got the better of him. He continued, but the tone had shifted. Gone was the casual humor. His voice wavered. "Watching our mother turn every gathering, every conversation, every drop of attention into a mirror for you to admire yourself in. I've watched you fail upward while others cleaned up your messes, and somehow you still got the credit, the praise, the second and third and fourth chances." Now the murmurs started. Chairs creaked. A few people exchanged looks. My aunt shifted in her seat, and my cousin's mouth fell open. I stayed still, letting the silence gather weight. Lucas tried to scoff, tried to throw on that usual smirk, but his voice cracked. "Okay, Elias, what is this?" "That," I said, pointing at the letter, "is my gift to you. And to Mom. And to everyone here who's been part of the lie we've all been telling for years." My mother finally found her voice. "You think this is appropriate? You think humiliating your brother on his birthday is something to be proud of?" My jaw tightened, but I didn't raise my voice. "You humiliated me the moment you raised that glass and said what you said." And everyone here laughed, like I wasn't sitting at the same table. Lucas tossed the letter onto the table like it was garbage. "This is pathetic. Seriously, man, you waited until my birthday to pull this stunt? Grow up." I laughed once, bitterly. "You still don't get it. You never will." There was more in that envelope, of course. That letter was just the beginning. What no one at that table knew, not yet, was that I had spent the last 6 months quietly untangling myself from this family's dysfunction, cutting the cords they didn't even know they had wrapped around me. No more emergency money transfers for Lucas. No more helping my mom file taxes she never thanked me for. No more being the backup plan. And I had something else in that envelope too. Something official. Something legally binding. But that part, I hadn't told anyone yet, not even my closest friend, because I wanted to do it right. I wanted them to see, to feel the shift when the ground started to move under their feet. Tonight was just the prelude, the first strike, and I wanted every word to land. Still standing, I reached into my jacket again and placed a second, smaller envelope on the table, this time directly in front of Lucas. "What now?" he said, arms crossed, his voice rising. "Another speech? You want applause or something?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small next to him. I didn't feel like the second choice or the shadow. "No," I said quietly. "Just accountability." That's when Lucas opened the second envelope. And everything stopped. He blinked at the contents. "Read the words." "Read them again." Then looked up at me, face pale. My mother snatched it from him and scanned the page. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The second envelope wasn't long. Just a few sentences, printed neatly on legal letterhead. But the weight of it hit like a sledgehammer. Lucas stared at me like I'd just detonated something sacred. My mother, meanwhile, had gone from confused to flushed with rage. Her lips parted, closed, then parted again, like she wanted to scream but couldn't find the right weapon yet. Because what she was holding was a formal letter from my lawyer, confirming that the ownership of our grandfather's cabin, the one my mother and Lucas had always treated like their personal vacation home, had been officially transferred to me. The cabin wasn't just a sentimental spot. It was our grandfather's legacy. The only real asset he left behind when he passed 3 years ago. He'd adored that cabin, maintained it until his final days, invited us there every summer. But more than that, he'd loved me. Quietly, steadily. Even when my mother brushed off my milestones or treated me like a nuisance, Grandpa Dean had made it clear I was the one he trusted. But of course, no one asked me what happened after the funeral. No one cared that he left behind a handwritten note for me with the keys. No one paid attention when my mother announced, with confident finality, "The cabin will go to Lucas eventually. Your grandfather would have wanted it that way." Everyone nodded. I didn't even bother arguing. I just waited. Waited until the paperwork cleared. Waited until the property taxes and transfer documents bore my name. Waited until everything was airtight. And now, I was done waiting. "I don't understand," my mom finally managed, her voice tight, like she was forcing civility through clenched teeth. "This must be a mistake. The cabin wasn't yours to give." I turned to her slowly. "No, but it was Grandpa's to leave. And he gave it to me. He trusted me to handle it properly. And for the last 3 years, I've let you and Lucas use it like it belonged to you. I covered the maintenance, the repairs, the utilities. You know how much I've paid to keep that place standing." She didn't answer, just stared at the letter like it might morph into something different if she blinked enough. Lucas stood up, so suddenly his chair skidded back. "So what? You're evicting us? You're going to be that guy now?" "No," I said simply. "I'm ending the lie. Starting today, neither of you has access to the property. I've changed the locks. I've notified the caretaker. And legally, you have no rights to it. So whatever summer plans you were cooking up, cancel them." The restaurant was silent. Even the servers had paused nearby, pretending to rearrange menus while very obviously eavesdropping. I didn't blame them. "This is petty," Lucas spat. "Unbelievably petty. Just because Mom made a joke." I stared at him. "It's not about the joke. It's never been about just one thing. It's years, Lucas. Years of being sidelined, laughed at, ignored. I didn't make a scene tonight, you did. I just handed you the truth." He stepped toward me. "You think you're better than us now? You think being some tech guy in the city means you can look down on your own family?" "No," I said calmly but firmly. "I think choosing peace over chaos means I don't have to keep letting people like you walk all over me." My mother looked stunned, maybe even a little afraid. She wasn't used to me speaking like this, not without backing down a second later. She opened her mouth, and I knew what was coming. The guilt trip, the trembling voice, the "we're family" speech that always came when things didn't go her way. So I cut her off. "I'm not doing this anymore. I came tonight because I thought maybe you'd surprise me. Maybe, just once, you'd acknowledge I existed in this family as something other than the fallback plan. Instead, you raised a glass and told everyone I didn't matter. So I made a choice." Lucas let out a bitter laugh. "You think this makes you look strong? You look like a bitter little kid." I tilted my head slightly. "Maybe. Or maybe I finally stopped playing the role you wrote for me." My mother's voice finally broke through. Quiet. Controlled. "We'll talk about this at home. Privately. There's nothing left to talk about," I said. "The cabin is mine. The boundaries are set. You're not entitled to my silence anymore." I picked up my coat, tucked my chair in. The letter sat in the center of the table like a dropped match on a dry field. I didn't bother with goodbyes. As I turned to walk away, I heard a fork clatter to the floor. My cousin whispering, "Did you know about this?" A quiet gasp from someone else. A glass tipping over. But the one sound that stuck with me, really stuck, was my mother's voice, low and shaken, asking Lucas, "What have we done?" I didn't wait to hear the answer. I didn't drive straight home after that dinner. I pulled into an empty overlook just outside the city, parked, and sat there watching the lights shimmer across the hills. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Voicemails. Mostly from Lucas. A few from my mother. None of them got answered. Not yet. I needed time. Not to think. My decision had already been made. But to breathe. For the first time in years, I didn't feel buried under them. And that silence? It felt like freedom. The next morning, the messages turned from confused to angry. Lucas texted, "You blindsided us. Real classy, man. That letter's a joke. You think a cabin makes you better than your family? Call me back. Now." Then from Mom, "We need to talk about last night. You embarrassed your brother in front of everyone. You've always been so dramatic. Can't we handle this like adults? Elias, I'm serious. Don't destroy our family over this." And then finally, "Fine. Do what you want. but don't expect us to come crawling when you realize what you've done." I didn't reply. Instead, I emailed my lawyer to confirm the lock change was complete. He'd hired a property manager on my behalf, someone local to the cabin, to oversee everything moving forward. I'd given clear instructions. No one, especially Lucas or my mother, was to set foot on the property without written permission from me. But I knew my family, and I knew they wouldn't just walk away quietly. 2 days later, I got a call from the caretaker, Jamie. She was blunt and no nonsense, the type of person who didn't sugarcoat. "Hey, Elias," she said. "So, your brother and a woman claiming to be your mother showed up this morning." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess. Try to act like they still own the place." "Yup. They had keys, old ones, which don't work anymore, and tried to tell me they were just dropping by to grab a few personal items." I could almost hear Lucas's smug voice in my head, trying to charm his way in. "How'd you handle it?" I asked. "Firm but polite," she said. "Told them the property was under new management, names on the deed is yours, and if they didn't leave, I'd have to call the sheriff." They got loud. "The mom, your mom, said you were being vindictive." The guy started yelling about lawyers. I sighed. "Thanks, Jamie. If they show up again, just go ahead and make the call. I'll back you up legally." "Will do. And for what it's worth, I've dealt with a lot of entitled people over the years. You're doing the right thing." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a while. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. This was who they were. My mother had spent years pretending her favoritism was just support, that her neglect of me was letting me be independent. Lucas had built his whole personality around being adored and enabled. Of course, they thought they could ignore a legal document. They'd ignored my boundaries for decades. But this time, there would be consequences. The next time I heard from them, it wasn't through texts. It was a group email. Subject line, "Family should forgive." The body of the email was long, clearly written by my mother, with Lucas probably standing over her shoulder. It was filled with passive-aggressive remarks cloaked in sentimentality. Things like, "We know you're hurting, Elias. This family has made mistakes, but love should come first. You're acting out of bitterness, and you'll regret pushing us away. Lucas deserves support during this tough time, not hostility. We'll forgive you when you're ready to come back to your senses." That last line was the breaking point. They'd forgive me? I didn't reply. Instead, I sent them a copy of the final estate documents, this time with highlighted sections showing that not only was I the sole legal owner of the cabin, but that I had also formally cut off financial support, something I'd never announced out loud before. Yes, for years, I had quietly sent money, covered shortfalls, paid surprise bills when Lucas bounced checks or when Mom's utilities were overdue. No more. I had formally separated myself from their finances. My lawyer helped me file the necessary documents to ensure I could never be held liable for any debts they might attempt to push my way in the future. I closed the shared emergency account, changed my phone number, locked down my social media. I went nuclear, but carefully, legally, and permanently. And then I waited. They went quiet. No more messages. No more calls. For 3 weeks, I didn't hear a word. It was eerie, but also peaceful, until I got a voicemail from my cousin Mel, one of the few family members I still somewhat trusted. "Hey, Elias. I wasn't sure whether to reach out, but things are kind of blowing up. Your mom's trying to guilt the whole family into cutting you off. She told everyone you stole the cabin. That grandpa left it to both of you, which I know is a lie. Lucas is apparently crashing at a friend's place now because your mom's house isn't big enough, and he's blaming you for ruining his summer. It's bad. Just thought you should know. And for the record, I'm on your side." I thanked her. That message was the final nail. The last scrap of guilt I had left? Gone. They had always expected me to be the safety net, the quiet son, the fixer. But the truth is, there's only so long you can keep setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm before you turn to ash. And I was done burning. That summer, I took 2 weeks off work and drove to the cabin myself. Alone. When I pulled up the long dirt road, something in me shifted. The air was still. The trees whispered gently with the wind. It was the same cabin I'd visited as a kid, same creaky porch, same screen door that whined when you opened it, but it felt different now. Not like a family home. Not like something borrowed or temporarily loaned to me. It felt earned. I stepped inside and lit a fire. Sat on the couch with a book. Drank coffee on the deck the next morning while deer wandered past the clearing. And I didn't think about my mother once. Not out of spite. Just peace. I never replied to her last email. never called Lucas back. I heard through Mel that they both eventually stopped trying to spin their story after most of the family started ignoring them too. The illusion of Lucas being the golden child didn't hold up once I stopped funding it. It's been almost a year now. The cabin is mine. My life is mine. And the silence I once feared is now my sanctuary. Some people say family is everything, but I've learned that family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up for you when you need them, who sees you, who chooses you. And for once in my life, I chose me. I've been keeping a secret for a long time. I'm 27, my name's Ryan, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet, unsuccessful one in the family. My parents, uncles, aunts, and cousins, honestly, they've all always looked at me like I wasn't worth their time. When we all get together, it's the same story. They talk about their successes, their big houses, their vacations, their perfect kids, and then there's me, the guy who never seemed to get it together. The guy who never had a high-paying job or went on big trips. I didn't mind so much when I was younger. I was focused on my own goals, quietly working toward things. But when you're the constant butt of jokes, it starts to get under your skin. The real issue began when I started working at a small tech company right out of college. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid decently enough. I lived in a small, rundown apartment that most of my family probably wouldn't have given a second look at. They'd make comments whenever I came to family gatherings. Must be nice to have such a cozy little place, Ryan, my cousin would joke with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. How's the job hunt going? My aunt would ask, as if being employed wasn't something to celebrate. What they didn't know was that I was secretly helping them, not out of guilt, but out of the fact that I couldn't stand seeing them struggle, especially when they never acknowledged it. My parents had racked up credit card debt over the years, always buying things they didn't need and living beyond their means. And I'd help them out. Every few months, I'd pay off part of their debt. Same with my uncle. His car was on the verge of being repossessed a few times, so I'd chip in a couple hundred here and there to cover the payments. No one knew. I just wanted to keep things running smoothly, even if it meant keeping my mouth shut and taking on the burden of something they'd never even acknowledge. But recently, things started to get a little uncomfortable. I don't know what changed, but my family's tone toward me started shifting. They got more entitled, more mocking. One particular afternoon, my cousin Karen had invited everyone over to her house for a family gathering. It was a weekend, and I had already been feeling the weight of their jokes from the last few months. I figured maybe this time it would be different. Maybe they'd finally recognize that I wasn't as lost as they thought. Instead, it was just another day of hearing about everyone's expensive vacations to Europe, Caribbean getaways, and new luxury cars. I sat there quietly, trying to keep my head down as they all went on about how they could finally afford to do this or that, with all the casual arrogance that only comes from people who don't know what it's like to struggle. Then, it was my uncle's turn to speak. Ryan, still living in that tiny little apartment, he said, leaning back in his chair, a smug grin creeping up on his face. What's the deal, buddy? Thought you'd be at least somewhere by now. I didn't respond immediately. I was used to these kinds of comments, but there was something about the way he said it, like he truly believed I was a failure. Like I had no right to be at the table, even though I'd been sitting there for years. It wasn't the first time he'd made a jab at me, but for some reason, this time it hit differently. Yeah, I'm still there, I said, keeping my voice calm. It works for me. Then, my aunt jumped in, looking over at me with that look she always gives when she's about to say something helpful. Ryan, sweetie, you really should think about upgrading, she said, her voice oozing with that fake sweetness I'd grown tired of. It's not healthy to keep living in a place like that. Don't you think? Maybe you could work harder. I don't know. Try harder. The entire table went quiet, and for a split second, I felt like I was back in high school, sitting alone in the cafeteria as everyone whispered behind my back. But then my uncle laughed. It was one of those obnoxious, self-satisfied laughs that made my blood boil. Ryan's never gonna amount to anything, he scoffed, taking a sip of his drink. I've been telling him that for years. Maybe it's time to accept it, huh? At that point, I had enough. I could feel my hands start to shake, my jaw tightening as the old anger bubbled up. But I stayed quiet. I didn't say anything. The conversation shifted, but the damage was done. I sat there, staring at my food, feeling completely invisible in my own family. It wasn't even just the comments, it was the way they all saw me. They expected me to be the joke, the failure, the guy who wasn't worth acknowledging. But I wasn't going to take it anymore. Not after everything I'd done for them. Not after all the times I'd kept my mouth shut and just paid their bills quietly. hoping things would get better. This morning, I sent out an email to all of them. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the jokes. It was everything. I knew the email would be a shock to them, but honestly, I wasn't prepared for the reaction I got. It wasn't just a letter explaining how I felt. It was a complete breakdown of everything I'd been doing for them. Every bill I'd quietly paid. Every loan I'd secretly taken out to help them with their debts. The credit card payments, the car loans, the utilities, the medical bills I knew my aunt couldn't afford because her husband had been out of work. I wrote everything down, itemized, with dates and amounts. I wanted them to see the truth, all in black and white. I closed the email with something simple, effective immediately. I will no longer be covering any of your bills or debts. I've done enough. This is my last act of kindness to you. I hesitated for a moment before hitting send. A part of me wondered if this would just make things worse, if they'd try to manipulate me, guilt-trip me, make me feel like I was abandoning them. But another part of me felt a weight lifting off my shoulders, like I was finally taking control. I didn't owe them anything anymore. I wasn't going to keep playing the role of the silent martyr. I sent it, and then I waited. The response was predictable, but still more intense than I thought it would be. Within minutes, my uncle called. His voice was tight, and there was an edge to it that I hadn't heard before. "Ryan," he said, almost in disbelief. "What is this? You can't just cut us off like that. You've been helping us for years, and now you're acting like you never did anything? What's wrong with you?" I didn't respond right away. Honestly, hearing him talk like that made me feel disgusted, but I wasn't about to get into an argument. "I did it because I wanted to," I said, my voice calm. "But I don't want it anymore. I'm done." I could hear him sputtering on the other end. "You think we don't need you? You're nothing without us. Don't you dare walk away from your family like this. You'll regret it." "Maybe I will," I replied. "But I won't regret not being your ATM anymore. I'm done." Then, my phone buzzed with a message from my aunt. It was long, frantic, and full of guilt. "Ryan, please. This is insane. We can work this out. You don't know what we've been going through. We need you. You're the only one who's been there for us. Don't turn your back on your family now. We all depend on you." I didn't respond to her message. I knew it was just more manipulation. I had always known that deep down, they didn't care about me as much as they cared about what I could do for them. And once I stopped giving, the true colors of my family started to show. But there was one final blow that hit harder than all the others. Around noon, I received a call from Karen, my cousin who had been hosting that family gathering. Her voice was shaking, a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Ryan, I don't know what is going on with you," she started. "But you can't just leave us hanging like this. Everyone's asking what happened. Why would you do this? Why would you cut us off like this? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? You're ruining everything." I stayed quiet for a moment, letting her rant. I had heard this kind of talk before, but now it felt different. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about me setting boundaries, about not letting them treat me like a doormat. Finally, I spoke up. "Karen, I'm sorry it's embarrassing, but maybe you should have thought about that before you all started treating me like I was invisible. I've done more than enough for you all, and I don't expect anything in return, but I'm not going to keep enabling you. So no, I'm not coming back to fix everything. I'm done." There was silence on the other end for a moment, and when she finally spoke again, it was more subdued. "You're making a huge mistake, Ryan." Maybe I was. But right then, I didn't care. I had made my decision. The next few hours felt like I was in a daze, watching as my family slowly started to implode. The calls, the messages, they kept coming in, begging me to reconsider, telling me how much they needed me. But I knew what they were really asking for: control. They wanted me to stay in my place, to keep sacrificing my own happiness for their convenience. And then, something unexpected happened. My mom, who had stayed quiet throughout all of this, finally called. Her voice was trembling, and it felt like she was breaking down in real time. "Ryan, please," she said, almost pleading. "I know I've never been the best at showing it, but I need you. We all need you. You're my son. I don't want to lose you over this. Please, don't cut us off. We're sorry." Her voice wavered, and for a moment, I felt like I might break. But deep down, I knew I couldn't go back. It wasn't just about the money. It was about me. I needed to take care of myself first for once. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said quietly, "but this is the last time I'm doing this. I'm done." There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "I understand. I just don't want to lose you, Ryan. And that was the hardest part. Because in that moment, I realized that the only way I could truly protect myself was to walk away from everything. I hung up the phone, my heart heavy, but still resolute. I thought I'd be fine, but something about that conversation with my mom stayed with me. I wanted to believe it was the right choice. But part of me couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling faster than I could manage. The next day, I received a barrage of messages, my inbox, my phone, even my social media. My uncle sent me a message that was more than just angry. It was laced with a deep sense of entitlement. "I've been there for you, Ryan, more times than I can count. And this is how you repay me? You think you can just throw your family away because you're too proud to admit you've been leeching off us all this time?" His words felt like a slap in the face. Leeching? Me? He'd never once asked how I was doing. He never once cared about me, only the money I could provide. But instead of replying, I simply blocked him. The last thing I wanted to do was engage with him any further. Then, the storm hit. A few hours later, I received a phone call from Karen. She sounded like she was on the verge of tears, but it didn't feel genuine. It felt more like desperation. "Ryan, you need to stop this. You're tearing this family apart. Everyone's talking about you, saying you've gone crazy. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about respect. You're not just cutting us off, you're rejecting us. Do you really want that?" I could hear the venom in her words now, the way she was twisting it into something that made it sound like I was the one who was in the wrong. "I'm doing what's best for me, Karen," I replied, keeping my tone firm. "You don't understand what it's like to have your entire life be about giving, and never getting anything back. This isn't about money anymore. It's about my sanity." She didn't let up. "You're being selfish. You've always been selfish, and now it's worse. I guess you're just not one of us anymore, huh?" And just like that, I could feel it, the final break. I'd been trying to help these people for years, but they had never seen me as anything other than a resource, a means to an end. That evening, I went to the gym to clear my head, trying to push everything out of my mind. But when I came back, I noticed something off. The front door to my apartment was slightly ajar. My heart dropped into my stomach as I stepped inside. Everything was exactly where I left it, except for one thing. A letter taped to my refrigerator with the words, "We need to talk," written in bold letters. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my mom's. I didn't know whether I was more angry or terrified as I tore open the envelope. Inside, there was a scathing letter. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation, it was an attack. She accused me of betraying the family, of throwing away everything they had done for me over the years. It was filled with guilt, but it wasn't the kind of guilt that came from love. It was guilt meant to manipulate me into feeling like I owed them something. I read through it, feeling my hands shake as I realized what had just happened. She wasn't just upset. She was trying to make me feel like the villain in this story. She was trying to force me to cave, to return to my place as the silent, submissive son who always put his family's needs before his own. But it didn't stop there. The next morning, as I was grabbing my coffee, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my dad. "Ryan," he started, his voice surprisingly calm. "What's going on? Your mom's beside herself. Your uncle's threatening to cut you out of the family altogether. Is this really what you want? You're going to end up alone. You know that?" I was so tired. So tired of the manipulation, the guilt, the constant demands. I almost wanted to hang up, but I stayed on the line. "Dad," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "You and Mom always said I'd be better off getting my life together. Well, this is what it looks like. I'm cutting ties with all of you. I'm not going to keep giving when all I get is resentment." He didn't speak for a long time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, unsure of how to respond. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaky. "This isn't how families work, Ryan. You don't just abandon us. You can't just walk away from your own flesh and blood." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied, the words coming more easily now. "I'm just standing up for myself. I deserve more than being treated like a cash cow." There was a long pause, followed by a soft sigh. "You're making a mistake. We'll all feel the consequences. You'll see." And then he hung up. At that point, I knew I had crossed the point of no return. They weren't just angry. They were desperate. Desperate to control me, to guilt me into continuing this toxic cycle. But there was a fire in me now, one that I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over them. And it felt like freedom. But the worst part? They weren't done. Not by a long shot. The next day, as I was leaving my apartment to go to work, I saw something on my windshield. At first, I thought it was just a flyer, but then I saw the familiar handwriting again. "You'll regret this, Ryan. This isn't over." I didn't recognize the handwriting at first, but when I turned the note over, my stomach dropped. It was from my cousin Karen. She'd taken it upon herself to deliver a message. I felt a sickening knot in my stomach. They were serious. They weren't going to let this go, not without a fight. The days that followed were tough. Every text, every phone call, every interaction seemed charged with tension, like the whole family was slowly closing in, each one taking their turn to attack. They didn't want to accept my decision, and it was clear now they weren't going to let it slide quietly. The final straw came when my mom called me again. This time, she wasn't even pretending to be calm. "You're really doing this, aren't you, Ryan?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "You're really just going to leave us behind like this? After everything we've done for you?" "I'm not leaving you behind, Mom," I said, my tone growing firmer with each word. "I'm leaving the toxic energy behind. You've made it clear that the only way I fit into this family is by paying for everyone's problems. But that's not me. That's not what I want. And you should have respected that a long time ago." I could hear her sniffle through the phone, and for a moment, I wondered if I should have said something else, something softer. But I shook that thought away. I had to be strong. "Don't you dare think this is easy for me, Ryan," she snapped. "You think you're the only one who's been carrying the burden of this family? Your uncle is furious. You've made a mess of everything." "Maybe it's a mess because we've been pretending it wasn't one," I replied. "Maybe it's a mess because I was too afraid to admit how much I've been suffering under the weight of it all." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could feel her trying to formulate something, any argument that could pull me back into the family's web. But I had made my decision. No turning back now. That evening, I received a text from my uncle. It was a group message, and I could see that everyone was included: Karen, my mom, and even some of the distant relatives. The tone was unmistakable. "We're having a family dinner tomorrow night. You better be there, Ryan. We're all tired of the silence, and it's time to fix this." Fix this? They were trying to manipulate me into thinking that they had any intention of doing things differently. But I wasn't fooled. It was a trap, and they knew exactly how to pull my strings. I knew it was going to be the showdown. I'd been avoiding the inevitable confrontation, but now I couldn't run from it anymore. So, I showed up. Walking into that house felt like stepping into the lion's den. The familiar smells of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes filled the air, but it was all tainted now. The moment I stepped inside, I could feel their eyes on me. My uncle gave me a nod, but it was a cold one, and Karen was glaring at me like I had personally wronged her. My mom was sitting at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. The whole room felt like a pressure cooker, ready to blow. "Ryan," my uncle started, his voice tight with restraint, "it's good to see you." He didn't sound like he meant it. "I'm sure we all have some things we need to say, don't we?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it's time to get everything out in the open." Karen, who had been quiet up until this point, couldn't hold herself back any longer. "You really think you're above all of us, don't you, Ryan?" Her words came out in a sharp, clipped tone. "You think you can just cut us all off and live your life like you're better than us?" I shook my head. "That's not it, Karen. It's never been about thinking I'm better than you. It's about realizing that I can't keep living in this toxic environment. For years, I've been carrying all of you, paying bills, covering debts, picking up the slack whenever things went wrong. And all I got in return was criticism and manipulation. I've had enough. But we need you, Ryan," my mom interjected, her voice shaky but insistent. "We've been through so much together. We're family. You can't just walk away from us." "I'm not walking away from you," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I'm walking away from this unhealthy dynamic. I'm walking away from the constant demands, the guilt trips, and the manipulation. I've spent so many years trying to please all of you, trying to be the perfect son, the perfect nephew, the perfect family member. But I've never been allowed to just be myself. And I'm done." My uncle slammed his fist on the table, his anger bubbling to the surface. "You think you've done everything for us, huh? You think we're all just some leeches who've been sucking you dry? You're wrong, Ryan. You've been selfish this whole time. This isn't about you standing up for yourself. It's about you being a coward and refusing to face your responsibilities." I didn't flinch. Maybe it's selfish of me to finally look out for myself. But you know what? I'm tired of being the only one who cares about this family. You all only care about what I can do for you. I don't owe any of you anything anymore. The room was silent, except for the sound of Karen's muffled sobs. My mom was staring at me, her eyes wide, her face a mixture of hurt and disbelief. I know this is hard to understand, I continued, but it's what's best for me. I can't keep sacrificing my happiness, my mental health, just to make everyone else comfortable. I've been doing that for years, and look where it's gotten me. My mom's voice quivered as she tried to speak again, but I raised my hand to stop her. It's not negotiable, Mom. I've made my choice. I'm walking away from all the negativity, and I won't feel guilty for doing what's best for me. There was a long, heavy pause. The weight of my words hung in the air, suffocating the conversation. I could see the realization dawning on their faces that I wasn't going to be the same Ryan they'd always relied on. The Ryan who showed up every time they needed something. The Ryan who did everything to keep the peace. That version of me was gone. I stood up from the table, my chest tightening but my mind clear. This is it, I said quietly. I'm done. And with that, I turned and walked out the door, leaving them behind. As I walked away from their house, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The chaos, the manipulation, the toxic energy, it was all behind me now. I was finally free. But I knew this wasn't the end. There would be more calls, more attempts to pull me back in. But I couldn't let that happen. Not anymore. So, I want to hear from you. Was I wrong to walk away from all of them? Am I selfish for choosing my own well-being over the family that's always drained me? Or is this just the kind of thing that happens when you've been taken advantage of for far too long? Let me know your thoughts. I really need to hear what you think about all this. I still remember the day my dad told me. It feels like a nightmare. I can't wake up from. My name is Sophie. I'm 18 years old, and I've spent most of my life trying to stay out of the way. That might sound strange, but it's the truth. I grew up in a family where I was the afterthought, the one who got overlooked. My dad, John, and my stepmother, Lisa, had always been more focused on Hannah, my stepsister, than me. Hannah, as you might guess, was the golden child. Pretty, popular, always the center of attention. Everyone loved her. Everyone always made excuses for her mistakes. Everyone thought she was perfect. Meanwhile, I worked hard to stay out of the limelight and just keep to myself. I never wanted to cause trouble, never wanted to be a burden. I knew the dynamics of our family well. I wasn't the one who got attention. I wasn't the one who mattered. But I thought, just maybe, there was one thing I could claim as mine. One thing I could control. That was my college fund. I worked tirelessly through high school, earning scholarships, acing tests, staying up late to finish projects. I knew my parents weren't going to foot the bill for my education. I had to prove that I could do it on my own. My dad promised me the money that had been saved in my college fund ever since I was a kid. I wasn't naive. I knew it wasn't a guarantee, but it was the only thing I had, the only way I could make sure I got to go to the university I had worked so hard for. That was until the day everything came crashing down. IT was a regular Tuesday evening when my dad called me into his office. He had that look on his face, the one he always gets when he's about to drop a bombshell. My stomach churned as I walked in, dreading whatever news he was about to deliver. "You wanted to talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sit down, Sophie," my dad said, his tone cold, as if he already knew this would hurt. I took a seat across from him, a strange feeling of unease rising in my chest. He cleared his throat and stared at the papers in front of him. "I've made a decision," he began, his voice flat. "I've decided to give your college fund to Hannah." I blinked, not fully comprehending what I had just heard. My mouth went dry. I thought I had misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't look up from the papers in front of him. "She needs it more than you do. You've got your scholarship. She doesn't have anything." A cold wave washed over me. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. "You what?" I choked out. "Hannah's struggling. Her grades aren't good enough for a scholarship, and she's not going to be able to afford college on her own. You've got your scholarship, Sophie. You don't need the money." I felt like the floor had just been ripped out from under me. My head spun. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. This couldn't be happening. I had worked so hard. I had sacrificed so much. But in that moment, everything I had worked for felt worthless. "Dad, that was my money. I earned it. You promised me." "I didn't promise you anything, Sophie," my dad snapped, finally looking up from the papers. "You've got your scholarship. That's more than most people get. Hannah needs this more than you." I wanted to scream. to shout at him, to make him see how wrong this was. But all I could do was stare at him, my heart sinking deeper with every word he spoke. But no more, Sophie. It's done. I've already transferred the money. I sat there, stunned into silence. My mind was racing, my hands trembling. It was over. Just like that. My dad, the man who I thought I could count on, had just ripped away everything I had worked for. For her, I could feel my throat tightening. The tears were starting to burn behind my eyes, but I couldn't let them fall. Not in front of him. Not in front of someone who had just torn my world apart. I can't believe you're doing this, I finally said, my voice thick with emotion. Dad just shook his head. You'll be fine. You've got your scholarship. Just let it go. And with that, he turned his attention back to the papers in front of him, completely dismissing me. I didn't know what to say anymore. I didn't know what to do. I stood up and walked out of his office, my heart breaking with every step I took. That I had been so sure that the one thing I had, the one thing I could rely on, was mine. But in that moment, it was gone. Just like that. And worse yet, he didn't even care. I went straight to my room, slamming the door behind me. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my hands shook violently as I reached for the edge of my desk, gripping it just to stay upright. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't think clearly. My father had just taken everything from me. He had given her what was mine. I tried to convince myself that maybe he didn't know how much this meant to me. Maybe he didn't understand the effort I had put in. But deep down, I knew the truth. He didn't care. Hannah didn't care either. She didn't even know the hell I was going through. In fact, she'd probably never even ask. I knew her too well. She played the sweet, innocent act when it was convenient. But when it came down to it, she was just as manipulative as my father. The anger began to bubble up in me. My whole life, she'd gotten everything handed to her. She was the one who got praised for doing the bare minimum. She was the one who didn't have to fight for anything. And now she was getting my future. I couldn't believe it. But what hurt even more than the anger was the crushing feeling of betrayal. How could my dad do this to me? All those years of promises, all those late-night talks where he told me he was proud of me, all of it, felt like a lie now. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. I could hear the faint sounds of laughter coming from downstairs. It was my dad and Lisa, celebrating. They probably didn't even know how much they had broken me. The worst part? It didn't even seem like anyone cared. I had no one to turn to. My friends? They would never understand. They didn't know what it was like to be the other daughter, the one who wasn't good enough for her father, the one who was always overshadowed by someone else. I had no choice but to fight for myself. I grabbed my phone from the desk and texted my best friend, Emma. She was the one person who knew what I was going through. I need to talk. I typed quickly, come over. I couldn't deal with this on my own. Not this time. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with her reply, on my way. I had no idea what I was going to say to her, but I knew I couldn't sit in this silence much longer. Emma always knew how to listen, how to make me feel like things weren't so hopeless. I stood up and paced the room, trying to shake off the feeling of helplessness that had settled into my bones. But it was hard to fight when everything felt so out of control. And in that moment, I realized something that terrified me. I wasn't sure I could win this fight. The doorbell rang just as I was trying to collect myself. I wiped my face quickly, not wanting Emma to see how much I was falling apart, but deep down, I knew there was no hiding it. I opened the door, and there she was, Emma, standing in the doorway with that familiar worried look on her face. Without a word, she walked in, sensing right away that something was wrong. Talk to me, she said softly, guiding me to sit on my bed. What happened? I didn't want to say it aloud. I didn't want to acknowledge how cruel everything felt. But as soon as I saw her face, I knew I had to. My dad, I began, my voice trembling. He gave my college fund to Hannah. He said she needed it more. Emma stared at me, her eyes widening in disbelief. What? Are you serious? Yeah, I whispered. He said I didn't need it because I have my scholarship, and that she's struggling, so she gets everything. Emma sat there in stunned silence for a moment. I could see the anger building up in her, her jaw tightening, but she didn't say anything right away. She just sat with me, letting me process. How is that even possible? She finally asked. That's your money. Your future. Doesn't he see that? I shook my head, the weight of everything crashing down on me again. He doesn't care. He never cared. I was always the backup plan. Hannah was always the priority. And now, it's like none of that matters. Have you talked to him since? Not really, I said, wiping my eyes. I couldn't. He just brushed me off, told me to let it go, like it was no big deal. Unbelievable, Emma muttered, crossing her arms over her chest. This is messed up, Sophie. You worked your butt off for this, and now he's just handing it over? I nodded, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. It feels like everything I've done doesn't matter, that I don't matter. Don't let him get away with this, Emma said firmly, her voice full of fire. This isn't right. You can't just let him ruin your future. I looked at her, exhausted. But what can I do? I don't even know where to start. He's already transferred the money. It's gone. And Hannah's never going to give it back? Maybe not, she agreed. But you can still fight. There's got to be something you can do. You have to make him realize what he's done. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel like I had a chance, like I could fix this somehow. But deep down, a voice kept whispering that it was too late, that there was no turning back from this. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart sank when I saw Lisa's shadow in the hallway. I shot a glance at Emma, but she didn't seem surprised. We both knew what was coming. Lisa knocked lightly on the door before entering. She smiled at me, that plastic, fake smile she always wore around me. Sophie, she said in that sweet voice, the one that never reached her eyes. We're all so happy for Hannah. She really needs this, and we're glad we could help. My stomach churned. Yeah, I'm sure you are. She didn't catch the sarcasm in my tone. Of course. I know you're disappointed, sweetie, but you have to understand. It's for the best. Hannah's future is at stake, and you've already got that scholarship. You don't need the extra money. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her what a horrible person she was. But instead, I just sat there, biting my lip until I tasted blood. Thanks for stopping by, I said flatly, trying to keep my voice calm, even though it felt like my whole world was crumbling. Emma shot me a sympathetic look, but Lisa didn't notice. She was too busy basking in her own sense of righteousness. I'll be in the kitchen, Lisa said, still wearing that fake smile. Just wanted to make sure everything was okay. Let us know if you need anything, sweetie. As soon as she left the room, I collapsed back onto my bed. Emma sat next to me, her hand on my shoulder, but even her comfort couldn't shake the cold, hollow feeling that had taken over. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I can't just let this go, Emma, I said quietly, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Emma just sat next to me, her hand still resting on my shoulder, offering what little comfort she could. The silence between us felt heavy, suffocating even. I could hear the faint sounds of laughter and chatter coming from downstairs, my dad and Lisa celebrating their decision, oblivious to the wreckage they'd caused in my life. I felt small, worthless. All the hard work, the late nights studying, the sacrifices I had made to earn that scholarship, and for what? It felt like I'd been working towards something that would never be mine. Like I was always going to be second place, no matter how much effort I put in. I don't know what to do, I muttered, almost to myself. They're never going to take me seriously. My own dad. He's always been so focused on making Hannah happy. And now this. I feel invisible. Emma leaned in closer, her voice soft but firm. You're not invisible, Sophie. You've worked harder than anyone I know. You've earned that scholarship, and it's yours, not hers, not anyone else's. I could feel the tears welling up again, but I forced them back. I couldn't cry anymore. I didn't have the luxury of letting myself break down. Not now. I'm just so angry. Angry at him, at everything. I worked for this, for years, and they don't even see it. They don't see me. Then make them see you, Emma said, her words cutting through the fog in my mind like a sharp knife. This isn't just about money, Sophie. It's about your future. Don't let them take that from you. You've earned every bit of it, and you have to fight for it. But how? I asked, a sense of hopelessness creeping in again. They've already made up their minds. I can't change that. Emma sat up straighter, her voice growing more determined. You can. You just need to show them how much this matters. You're not just some backup plan. You have a future, and it doesn't revolve around them. You don't need their approval to succeed. Her words hit me hard. A wake-up call I wasn't ready for but desperately needed. I had been so focused on the unfairness of it all, on how badly they had treated me, that I forgot the most important thing. I had earned this, and maybe, just maybe, I could still take it back. The idea of fighting for it felt overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't let this go. Not after everything I had worked for. Not after everything they had taken from me. I'll figure it out, I whispered. More to myself than to Emma. I'll make them see. I won't let them get away with this. Emma gave me a small, supportive smile. You've got this. Don't let them make you feel like you're not worthy of your future. For the first time in hours, I felt a small flicker of hope. I wasn't ready to back down. I wasn't going to let my father or Lisa, or even Hannah, steal what was rightfully mine. But as I stared at the wall, the anger slowly simmering in my chest, I realized one thing. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about proving to myself that I wasn't going to let my family define my worth. I was going to take back what was mine, and I would do whatever it took to make them regret ever underestimating me. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. My mind was racing with ideas, but also with anger. It wasn't just the money that had been taken. It was my dignity, my future, everything I'd worked for. I was determined not to let it go. After a restless night of barely sleeping, I spent the entire morning planning. I had to find a way to get my college fund back, or at the very least, make my father understand how much he had hurt me. I sat at my desk, scrolling through my phone, looking for any way to prove that what he had done wasn't just unfair. It was illegal. Why scholarship was important, yes. But the college fund was supposed to be my safety net. It was meant to cover expenses that weren't included in my scholarship. Books, housing, anything that wasn't covered. And now that was all gone. Gone to someone who didn't need it. Someone who hadn't worked a fraction as hard as I had. I started to search for legal loopholes. Maybe there was some way I could prove my father had no right to make that decision. Maybe there was a way to show that he was neglecting my needs. But the more I looked, the more I realized that I was in deeper than I thought. My father wasn't just wrong. He was breaking the rules in ways I hadn't even considered. He didn't even know what he had done. But the legal battle was going to take time. Time I didn't have. And that's when I realized the worst part. Even if I won, even if I somehow got the money back, the damage was already done. And my father would never see me the same way again. He'd always look at me as the problem child, the one who didn't fit into his perfect little family. I was always going to be second place to Hannah. I sighed and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I had a decision to make. I could keep fighting, keep pushing, and let this destroy everything. Or I could take a different approach and find a way to make my father regret his decision without involving the LAW. It felt like a risk either way, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him win. I had to outsmart him. The days passed, and I kept up the fight, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that no matter what I did, nothing would ever be the same. No matter how hard I worked to prove my worth, no matter how much effort I put into making my father see the damage he had caused, it all felt futile. I had tried to take back what was mine, but the weight of the situation was crushing. I knew deep down that there was no winning here. Not really. Emma had been my rock throughout all of this, always offering support, always reminding me of my worth. But even she could see it. Even she could feel the tension. Nothing I did could change the past. Nothing could undo the damage that had been done, and more importantly, nothing could make my family see me as anything more than a side character in their perfect little narrative. Then came the day when my father finally spoke to me again. It wasn't about the money, though. It wasn't about making things right. It was about him making sure I understood his position, how I had no right to question his decisions, how Hannah was more important because she was the one who needed help. He said, "You've already got a scholarship, Sophie. You don't need the money. You've already won." His words hit me like a slap in the face. It was as if everything I had done was irrelevant, as if the work I'd put in meant nothing to him. The scholarship was his excuse for taking away my future. "You're right," I said quietly, my voice almost steady. "I don't need the money, but I did need your support, and I did need you to see me." There was a long pause, a heavy silence that stretched on too long. I could tell he didn't have a response. He didn't understand. Not really. He never had. Finally, he muttered, "I'm doing this for the family. It's for the best." And with that, he walked away. I could feel the tears brimming in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to cry for him. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. For the first time, I realized something. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the scholarship. It was about me finally understanding that no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to prove myself, they weren't going to change. They weren't going to see me the way I wanted them to. I had spent all this time fighting for their approval, for their recognition. But now, I realized I had to stop. I had to stop letting their expectations define me. I had to take control of my own future. I would make it on my own terms. And so, as my father's footsteps faded away, I made a vow to myself. I would never again beg for their acknowledgement. I wouldn't wait for their validation. I would build my future, piece by piece, and I would do it alone if I had to. A few weeks later, I found myself standing in front of my college's admissions office, ready to take the next step toward the future I had built for myself, without any help from my family. I'd gotten everything I needed together. The scholarships, the loans, the housing. It wasn't easy, but I'd done it. Months passed, and my life slowly began to settle into something new. College was hard, but it was mine. I worked tirelessly, trying to keep my head above water, all while navigating the tangled mess my family had left behind. But every time I looked at my grades, my progress, I reminded myself that I had earned this. No one could take it away from me. Then one evening, my father called. I had been avoiding his calls for weeks, not sure what to say or how to make him understand everything that had happened. But that night, I was feeling especially vulnerable. Maybe I was hoping for an apology, maybe for him to acknowledge the hurt he'd caused. Maybe I just needed to hear that he was sorry for what he had done. I hesitated before answering, but eventually, I picked up, "Hello?" My voice was cold, distant. "Sophie." My father's voice came through the phone, softer than usual. "I think it's time we talked." I clenched my jaw, the anger from all those weeks of silence flooding back. "Talk about what?" "About what happened. About everything," he said, his tone almost pleading. "I know things have been hard between us, but I want to make things right." I could feel the lump in my throat, the urge to just let him apologize and forgive him, to pretend like things could ever go back to normal. But then I remembered the look in his eyes the day he took my future away from me. I remembered the way he had dismissed me like I didn't matter. The hurt I'd carried for so long. It was too much. "I don't think we have anything left to talk about," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You made your decision. You chose her over me. And I can't forget that." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he might say something, but he didn't, and that was enough. "I don't need you to fix this," I continued, my words becoming more steady, more final. "I'm done, Dad. You've made it clear who matters more to you. I don't need to keep fighting for something that doesn't exist anymore." "Sophie," his voice cracked, but I didn't care. I couldn't care. "You made your choice," I said, my voice stronger now. "And I've made mine. I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm not going to spend my life chasing your approval. I'm done." With that, I hung up. No dramatic goodbyes. No words left hanging in the air. Just the finality of the decision. I never heard from him again. It's he first. I felt relief. The weight of his neglect had lifted. But soon, it settled into something more painful. The silence between us was suffocating, and I realized that part of me, the part one hated, still wanted him to come back and fight for me. But I knew, deep down, that would never happen. And so, I continued on my path, building a future for myself. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wished things had been different, but I wasn't going to waste another second wishing for a father who would never be the one I needed him to be. In the end, I didn't just lose my family. I lost the idea of what family was supposed to be, but I gained something much more important: my independence, my strength, and my peace. I didn't need him to validate me anymore. I didn't need any of them. And that was the hardest lesson I'd ever had to learn, but it was also the most freeing.
Man, this story really hits hard, doesn't it? It's wild to think that someone would go that far, especially when it's family. Sophie worked so hard for her future, and instead of getting support, she got betrayal. It makes you wonder, how much can you take before you just walk away from it all? So, what do you think? Do you think Sophie made the right choice by cutting ties, or was there another way to handle it? Would you be able to walk away from your family if they did something like that? I want to hear what you guys think, so drop a comment below and let me know.